when you turn around. It's like, what's that sound?
Hello everyone and welcome to the Indie Crew channel. I'm Kennedy, your host for today, so sit back, relax and let me introduce you to Slayaway Camp. Slayaway Camp was developed and published by Blue Wizard Digital and is available on mobile devices, Steam, Xbox One, Nintendo Switch and PlayStation 4. On mobile, the game costs £2.99 or $2.99. On Steam, £6.19 or $8.99. And on PlayStation, Switch and Xbox, £13.99 or $16.99. On mobile, there is a free version entitled Free to Slay. However, this does of course mean it has ads. Also, the version available on consoles is known as the Butcher's Cut, which is for the most part the same but includes all DLC movies, plus a few skins, gore packs and a digital download of the soundtrack. Slayaway Camp is a cartoony 3D puzzle game similar to the likes of Active Neurons that pays homage to the aesthetic and humour of cheesy 80s horror movies like Nightmare on Elm Street, Halloween, and of course the game's biggest inspiration, Friday the 13th. The game is split up into 15 different movies, 10 regular movies and 5 DLC and extra movies, consisting of 10 to 15 levels each. Also further adding to the 80s vibe is the level select screen, which is an old school video rental store similar to the likes of Blockbuster. The main goal of most of the levels is to eliminate all the victims and then make your way to the exit portal. You do this by sliding up, down, left and right. Once you slide, you can't stop moving until you hit something, which means you have to plan your movements carefully. If you run into a victim, you will slay them away. Yeah, I just said that. However, if you land directly next to one, you'll frighten them, causing them to go in the opposite direction, again making you need more strategic thinking. Once all victims have been dispatched, make your way to the exit portal, a glowing white pentagram, which should now be open. Over the course of the game, you will also encounter hazards. Hazards are essentially things that, if landed on, will kill you. Some of these include water, holes, mines, and cats. Yeah, if you kill cats in this game, you die. You can also use hazards to your advantage, as you can scare the victims straight into them. If you land on one of these said hazards though, never fear, because rewind is here. What is actually wrong with me? Yep, failure doesn't cost much in Slayaway Camp. If you die, get stuck, or scare the victims into an impossible position, you can always just rewind. You can either rewind a few moves, or restart the whole mission depending on how badly you've messed things up. This comes in especially handy on the Swat Levels. Swat Levels are just the same as normal levels, however they need to be completed within a certain number of moves, or else a SWAT team will arrive and pull a Jason Goes to Hell on poor old Skullface. These are the most basic mechanics in the game, and the first movie goes over them in depth. As you progress through the game more, slightly more complicated mechanics will be introduced, the first of which being police. The police are introduced in the second movie and act as a hazard for Skullface. If you land directly in front of a police officer, they will arrest you and you'll fail the mission. However, if you slide into their sides or their back, you can deal with them the same way you do civilians. But the thing that differs police from civilians is that killing them isn't mandatory, and the portal will open whether they're dead or alive. For the most part, the police aren't a major threat if you think carefully, but quite a bit later in the game, SWAT officers are introduced. SWAT officers function the same as police, only a little more annoying. They too can be killed from the sides and back, and killing them isn't required to finish the level, but instead of just the square in front of them being dangerous, they have a sniper beam aimed across the whole row in front of them, meaning if you stop there at all, you're toast. Yet another feature you'll come across in Slayaway Camp is the Knockable Objects. These are introduced early on and are basically just objects that, once ran into, fall over. You can use these to block hazards, open or block pathways, and best of all, crush victims, but do be careful, as these can block the road for you, making levels impossible. Next up are the telephones. Telephones in this game are used to attract the attention of the victims. How they work is, Skullface slides into one telephone, which causes the other telephone in the level to ring. The telephone which rings makes everyone in the surrounding 4 rows attract to it. Similar to the telephones are the teleporters. These are introduced in Slayaway Camp X, a direct parody of Jason X, and they allow Skullface to, well, you guessed it, teleport. It's really simple. You slide into the teleporter, and you teleport to the other one. Nothing else required. This is personally my favourite gameplay mechanic, as it fits the movie really well and is just generally cool. The final gameplay mechanic we're going to discuss here are the light switches. Light switches do just what you expect. Switch the lights on and off. When the lights are off, victims won't be frightened by you when you land next to them. This means they won't be able to escape in the later movies when they have the opportunity to do so. It also allows Skullface to stop at different points, which in some levels is key to getting through. Now, onto the controls. The controls are very self-explanatory, and from what I've said and the gameplay you've seen today, you can probably gauge what the controls are like, so I won't spend a lot of time dwelling on them. This is really one of the simplest control schemes I've ever had to work with. I see this as an extreme positive, as it means the challenge of the puzzles isn't amplified by bad controls. Looking at you, Saw. Simplicity also means the game will have more manageable controls on all platforms. Even on mobile, this game is more than playable. Speaking of the different platforms, whether it's controller, keyboard and mouse, or touch controls, they are incredibly responsive, and there is absolutely no lag or input delay, which is always a positive no matter how simple the gameplay is. As I said, I won't dwell on the controls too long, there are bigger fish to fry, the first of which being the art style. Prepare to hear the word cartoony a good few times. The game has a very cartoony art style, to say the least. Everything is very blocky, almost like some kind of smooth, bubbling Minecraft texture pack. The unseriousness of it really does go hand in hand with the corny 80s horror movie aesthetic, and, in my opinion, the art style complements the game very well. This art style also allows the game to be enjoyed by everyone. The cartoony nature of it pretty much nullifies the violence and allows people of all ages to play, at least under adult supervision. In fact, there is an option to remove the blood and gore entirely, which you met with at the start of the game. This also adds to the retro horror vibe, as the option for high levels of gore is known as R-rated, and no gore is known as PG-13. Slayaway Camp really does have a certain charm to it that not many other games can capture. The next aspect of the game I want to have a look at is the soundtrack. The soundtrack consists of 18 songs composed by, and I am going to totally butcher this pronunciation, GNU Truncheon. This soundtrack complements the game itself so well. The majority of the songs are catchy 8-bit melodies, which yet again remain true to the 80s retro vibe the game has. In fact, the main theme tune, Only the Strong Survive, has a part in it which is almost identical to the Gremlins theme, which in and of itself gives serious fairground tunes. The soundtrack also has different tunes for different kinds of levels. For example, the song The Law is played on the SWAT missions, and Don't Answer the Phone, which is played in levels which feature the aforementioned telephone. My top 5 favourite songs from the soundtrack, in no particular order, include Only the Strong Survive,
Only the strong survive. You better run if you wanna stay alive. Only the strong survive. Yeah.
Welcome to Camp, The Law, Love is Like a Machete,
Love is like a machete to the heart. Love is like a razor blade, cut you up like a chainsaw, baby. Love will.
and Basement. Now there are just a couple more things I need to mention before I give my final verdict. One of these is good and one not so much. Firstly, one great aspect of the game is Faces Have Killed 3. I've been waiting for the end to cover this. It's a bonus movie in Slayaway Camp, which is completely different to everything in the game. After you finish each level in Slayaway Camp, you are met with a small minigame you play to earn coins. This minigame sees you execute a victim in an especially gruesome way by pressing X at just the right time. Once the little skullface icon passes over the red part of the bar, you better be ready to press like you're playing My Name is Mayo, because that red part can get annoyingly small. Anyways, Faces Have Killed 3 is a movie dedicated to just this minigame and seeing how far you can get before you fail. This movie is not only a seriously fun challenge, but also a real good way to get coins to spend on gore packs and skins. Definitely check this out if you do decide to play the game. Unfortunately, no game is entirely great, and Slayaway Camp suffers from one fatal flaw. In the back end of the game, when the levels become extremely challenging to complete without a guide or hints, the game can get very repetitive and, quite frankly, boring. For me, this feeling came for the first time when I was playing the last couple levels of the third movie. Once new mechanics pretty much stop being introduced, the game can become quite long-winded and feel like a drudge to get through. Don't get me wrong, this very well could just be, for lack of a better term, a skill issue. It was often the amount of time it took me to complete the levels that made me feel this way, but they are genuinely challenging to the average person and require a lot of thought. So please do at least bear this criticism in mind when and if you decide to play Slayaway Camp. Overall, I would give Slayaway Camp a 6.5 out of 10. I would have gone with the safe 7 out of 10, but because of just how repetitive the game got, I couldn't justify it, as a game being boring is one of the worst things it could possibly be in my opinion. Despite this, however, I would still absolutely recommend the game, don't get me wrong. Because of the lack of a real story and the simplicity of the controls, you can easily put this game down and pick it back up whenever you feel like it. It would also be great fun to play with friends when you can help each other and take turns to share the difficulty amongst two brains. And if you are a fan of horror, this will be right up your alley. Anyway, I think that's all I have to say about Slayaway Camp. Big thank you to Silver for the awesome thumbnail art, and be sure to check out our community Discord in the description of the video. I've been your host Kennedy, and thanks for watching.